I could have really been bringing attention to things that were important to me, but I was too afraid to open my mouth.
The intention then following through really gives you peace. And until you do it, you don't realize how much you've actually been carrying.
How can you speak love and yet not understand your decisions are based in something else completely?
I've turned down so many opportunities, massive projects, because I didn't align. And I'm okay with that.
Sometimes it is hard to make that decision because there's a big shiny thing.
I've come to the realization that, first of all, I don't need permission, but more importantly, why have I even asked for permission?
I've gotten to the point now where I think the only thing that I'm concerned about is what does God think about what I'm doing?
This is Let's Pay Attention, Hacking Consciousness. I'm Cathy Dimarchos. Let's explore what it means to lead, live, and listen with intention.
Well, hello everyone and welcome to Let's Pay Attention, Hacking Consciousness. And today, you're going to love this next guest. From the moment that I actually met her, and it was a few years ago, there was this incredible depth to who she actually is. And you will know her through an enormous, I'm going to say the breadth of what she does and who she actually, is seen to be is incredible. So let me just start by actually introducing you to Sandra. So from TV dramas to executive communication coach, nearly all of Sandra Dee's life has focused on relationships, sometimes real, sometimes as seen on TV. Her major acting roles began on Another World, then Sunset Beach, Bold and the Beautiful, General Hospital, Days of Our Lives, and guest starred on many, many prime TV shows. Ironically, though, her inability to use her voice drove her to study human and animal communication, neurolinguistics, and became a master in several modalities, including as an NLP trainer, hypnosis, stage mastery, and level 2 natural lifemanship and Igala. Sandra Dee is an international speaker, TV, radio, podcast host. She's a published author, CMMM coach, Jolie coach, Blue Ribbon ambassador, and active animal advocate. Her clients have appeared on major TV and major stages worldwide, as well as on major US networks. She founded Charisma on Camera Presentation Training in 2010 and Unbridled Life LLC, featuring her signature leadership-focused retreats with horses in 2019. Now, if you haven't actually guessed what a marvel she is, you surely know now. Sandra, I'm so thrilled to have you.
Yay! I'm so glad to be here. We're going to have some fun today.
We are. Do you know, you have got this incredible depth to you. But what I really want is for people to see who I actually see, and that is not only the depth of your knowledge, but actually the center of your soul, because that's what actually radiates out. Is that okay?
Yes, I do think that you see that in people, which is just, I think, the most gorgeous thing about you. So it's like mutual flattery here to start off. But yes, absolutely. I'll go anywhere that you want to go. And if I go too far into anything that's weird, you need to pull me back, you just pull me back. But yeah.
There'll be nothing weird. Nothing weird. It's what people will need to hear.
Yeah, so, that's some interesting experience.
So Sandra, if I was to actually just touch on one thing that you shared, and that was in respect to you being, on that, I'm going to say global stage behind some really big name TV shows. So most people will actually say that you had a voice, but what you recognize is that the voice wasn't your own. And that's actually huge. What would you say was that moment of realization for you?
There were a few. I remember one very distinctly. And I mean, just a few that are very distinct, but one that I think might resonate with some people that have stage fright or something like that. I'm on a show, and it's a very popular show at the time. When I first started doing soap operas, soaps were huge. we didn't have Netflix at the time, right? So people were very, very loyal to their shows, their stories, as they called them. And so I was considered quite successful in this, and people would wait outside the studio. I mean, they would stop me in the street. They would stop me when I was having dinner. There was definitely a recognition there that if I'd used that platform well, I could have, at this point, I did end up doing it, but I could have really been bringing attention to things that were important to me. But I was too afraid to open my mouth. So afraid, in fact, that we were called as a cast, as many of us could make it, to a charity event. So I'm standing up on stage with the cast, which is kind of like being in the chorus. You don't really stand out if I'm standing with everybody, right?
Yep.
It's just like, yes, and I'm cheering the actor who's definitely an extrovert, and he loves the center. He's got the microphone and he's raising the crowd up, and it's a fundraiser. So the more excited they get, the more we hope that they're going to donate to the children's charity, which is what we're there for. And all of a sudden he turns and he hands the microphone straight to me. And I felt my knees start to buckle.
Oh, wow.
I mean, me, out of everybody there, he hands the microphone to me. I don't remember what, apparently something came out of my mouth before I could throw it back in his direction or to whoever was closest to take the microphone, because I was terrified. I nearly blacked out. I don't remember anything, but I know I remained standing, so I didn't physically drop to my knees and black out, but mentally I was gone. I was just gone. And I thought, at the end of that day, what's wrong with me? Right. Why is it that I can take someone else's persona as an actor and hide behind that so well? Well, I learned why. That was a safe space for me.
Yeah.
That was safer than being me. Even in my own home, I didn't have a feeling of safety. I went outside and went into nature for that. So when I was in school, I had a school play, which is why I think that the arts for children is so important, so that they can find their way to express.
Yeah.
And if that is their way to express, right? And it was the first time, was a school play, that I realized that somebody said something nice about something I did. And I was told I was good. I was good at it. So I hid, and my imagination was already so big anyway, because I spent a lot of time alone. And so I let it grow when I was a child. That was my space, right? I created relationships with the birds and the bees and all that stuff. And to me, it was all real. And now I realize a lot of it probably was real. But I was very good at creating that space where I felt safe. And when I didn't feel safe, that was the disconnect. It's when somebody said the words, "Here, camera's going to come on, you just be yourself." And I didn't have any value in that file.
It's interesting. I mean, you've contextualized that, in respect to you being in a position of performing, for a script.
Yeah.
We do that in life, and we have disassociated that. We believe that the persona that we actually put on every single day is actually who we are, until it's not.
Right. When the job changes, when the divorce happens, when the kids leave, when you've overcome a life-threatening illness.
Yeah.
Yes. These are the things, the transitions that make people go, wait, who am I? And that's the point where I love to meet, especially women, because they're so willing to take a look and go, okay, let's go back. Let's remember what it felt like to be you. If that means we go back to being 6 years old.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like to be you, because that is still who you are. That essence is still there. And so often when I would work with women, it's interesting. I heard you in my bio say that the horse retreats started in 2019, and they did, but I've really just dove now into really embracing the unbridled life path, for what I'm doing. And it's so funny to think in 2019, I only dipped a toe in the water. I was so, well, what are people going to think? So I still had my own journey to make with that, right? Even though I knew this is what I'm called to do, I still only dipped a toe in the water. And I'm here now to realize and to tell women, you do not have to just dip a toe. If you feel like that's where you go, then you go. Time is not something that can be replaced.
Yeah.
And if you have a calling, don't hesitate to do that. You are a living example of stepping into what your calling is and having no qualms about what people think or at least it doesn't seem like you do, because I've gotten to the point now where I think the only thing that I'm concerned about is what does God think about what I'm doing?
Yeah.
If people think I'm crazy, it's okay.
Do you know, I think you've touched on something. I've come to the realization that why am I actually expecting other people to understand who I am and what I actually see? They're not me. And I think that's what you're seeing when you say that, I'm not, wanting other people to understand, what I do, and I just dive into things. It's because I've come to the realization that, first of all, I don't need permission, but more importantly, I've been able to ask myself, why have I even asked for permission when the intention of what it is that I'm doing is to actually, raise awareness, allow people to have their own agency? It's actually not about me. And that's what drives me.
But it is interesting that it's disruptive.
Yes.
When we come like that, even though that's the way we are naturally to be, it's disruptive because society has the norms. Society has the bipolar. You're either black or you're white. And I don't mean that skin wise. I mean you're left or you're right, or you're black or you're white, or you're this or you're that, or you're Republican, or you're like, there is always this polarization that we have become so accustomed to doing. There is a competition that's not even based in reality. Now, thanks to AI, it's ridiculous, right? I mean, there's ads that are running for fitness, workout. Not a single one of these women speaking is a real person. The body's not real. Like, it's not real.
Yeah.
And they're selling this to people, and people are buying it, thinking that that's going to be them in the future. And to me, I really believe that the future health of our species relies on us letting go of all of that, even if it's 5 minutes in a day in the beginning, and getting back to the rhythm of nature. And I don't mean that you have to go on a retreat. You can walk out you can open your window in your car and sit there and feel the breeze. There's ways that you can reconnect. But this fact that nature deprivation disorder is actually something that's listed in the psychological book of disorders just blows my mind. It blows my mind. It should not even exist.
Exactly. And I love that you've actually just made it so simple. It's not necessarily about jumping from one thing into the other. And that includes, you don't have to jump into a retreat. The essence is slow down.
Yes.
Just breathe.
Presence.
Stop the actual cycle, the loop. I think I've actually said to people, it's as simple as actually understanding the difference between thinking and thought. And if I, can explain that, I actually say thinking is, if you look at it from a neuroscience perspective, all that you're doing is actually going to your circuit board and you're actually going back to recall what you have already done. That is actually, in Einstein's perspective, madness. You are repeating what you have already done, but you're expecting a different outcome.
Different result.
And what you said right at the beginning, that creative space, that's thought.
Yes. That's what we are designed to do.
Yeah.
We are creation. We are part of that. We were made for that, in that. We just had Christmas. People celebrate Christ. He was born amongst the animals. The first people to hear of Christ's birth were those that took care of the animals. They were shepherds. We are so a part of that even God sent his own son to come through that avenue, not in a castle somewhere. And so there's many different takes you can take on that, but it's really interesting that no one has really spoken about that, about the closeness with the animals, the lessons from the fig tree, that he was so involved and hands-on with nature and using that as a way to teach and show and engage. And we have somehow now completely said, well, I know how, but we have completely separated ourselves in so many ways from what it is actually here to make us healthier and to support us. That's what we're part of.
Well, we are so busy actually playing the chase game. And I think that's the one thing, if, we can take anything from ancient cultures, it is that they actually paid so much more attention to nature, to what is actually living, on this planet that's actually been alongside us the whole time. But we are looking for that quick fix. And that often means that we haven't even slowed down to recognize where we are, let alone where we're going.
Right, right. I mean, we've gone from, remember that old phrase, like really old phrase, stop and smell the roses?
Yeah.
Well, the thing that comes to mind for me is always picking up a young friend's, and her mother laughed just as hard, but her mother is watching her walk across a parking lot. And she's not even, forget about smelling the roses. She doesn't even look at where her feet are going because her head is in her phone. And she's walking across the parking lot, and her mother goes, she's going to trip over the parking bar, right, for the cars.
Yeah.
She did. Plap. And her mother started laughing. I'm like, you're her mom. You shouldn't be laughing. She goes, well, she's fine. And we joke about it. But here's a girl at the time that was 15 years old that was so consumed in this. There's no way she knew what was going on around her. And it was actually quite unsafe because she's walking across a dark parking lot and not paying attention to anything. So there's so many different levels of lesson in that memory for me. But part of it is we really don't even look at where our feet are going. How many times do you pull up in a car and somebody's on their phone and just walks right in front of your vehicle and you're thinking, oh my gosh, right? No idea what's going on. How often when I tell somebody, speak to the person that's checking you out at the grocery store, they look at me like I'm a little crazy. I said, they're just a person.
Yeah.
I've actually talked to them before. They will actually respond instead of when they say, how was your day? And you go, fine, thank you. How about fine? Look at them and say, how was yours? And actually wait for an answer. You'll be shocked because 99% of people don't make eye contact with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you do that, it's a connection. And there are so many connections with humans, with critters. Like my day started today with a wildlife, how do I call it? A wildlife rescue, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And some destruction to the house. So my dogs were tearing apart. I just have to share this. We'll see what comes out of it. So my dogs were tearing apart a downspout. And obviously something had tried to escape them and they had gone up the downspout. Nowhere to go, but stuck up in there, right? And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a snake. What kind of snake? I don't know if it's a chipmunk. No idea. Well, it turns out that, one of my dogs was so ferocious about trying to tear this thing off and get to it that she closed the metal. So this poor thing was in there. I didn't know that it was closed. I thought we'd pull the dogs away and the critter would get out. It couldn't because she had crimped it closed. So I come out this morning and I hear this awful ruckus. And once again, the dogs are ripping the thing nearly off the house. I'm like, oh my gosh, right? And I said, Alan, the thing is still in there. So we put the dogs away. He has to saw through this and we pull out a little squirrel.
Oh.
She had been in there all night. We had to pull her out by her tail because we finally got the tail, pulled her out, flopped her down on the ground, and she stopped and looked at us for a second.
Yeah.
And then scampered off. We're like, okay, so good deed done. Different start to our day. But how many people realistically would have even noticed?
Yeah.
And that was such a blessing to my day. It wasn't how we thought the day was going to go in the beginning. It cost me my walk and my workout, but that was okay,
That's paying attention, though. How many times are we actually in a conversation and the only thing that we're looking at is how we can actually then relate, what we've experienced as opposed to just acknowledging what's just happened, right? That's actually the connection.
Or asking questions.
Yeah, asking questions, looking at them, paying attention directly into their eyes, making them feel like, yes, I do actually see you.
Yes, exactly. Seen.
So, Sandra, if I was to say to you, in all the realizations that you've had, and you have obviously been in many situations that have been challenging, what would you say was maybe the crystallized point where you've said, I can't no longer actually stay silent. I need to actually, have my voice heard?
It's compounded. Definitely working with animals. Our first property here in Texas is called Genesis Farm because it was a new start for us. It was also a place where we had all rescued animals. Even some of the chickens were rehomed chickens. So everything was, a horse that was a giveaway. And they were beautiful. And people would say, where did you get your horses? I said, they were rescue. And seeing also in that circumstance with that place, I had people that brought horses that had been mistreated and learning what happens to animals. And and then getting involved, rather deeply involved in dog rescue and dog rehabilitation here in Texas. And a lot of people will say, I can't volunteer to help at a shelter because my heart wouldn't take it. But if you have just one little dog that you are rooting for and they get adopted, there's such a wonderful warmth in your heart that it does keep you going for the next one and the next one and the next one. And yes, it's hard. But I think when I saw the disconnect, it's more than, than a sad song on a commercial and send $10 a month. To me, it's a representation of our separation from creation. And I was appalled. I was listening to a pastor the other day. I want to insult anybody that's religious. I'm not against religion exactly, but this gentleman has a platform. As I said, when I had a platform, I eventually did use it for good. I started working with an animal sanctuary, ironically. That was my first time that I actually got up and organized something and spoke in front of people because it was so important to me. It was so deeply rooted in me. And so when I see this pastor the other day get up and admit that he was very happy that his wife was given a mink coat. And I know the cruelty that goes into that and the pain and the suffering and the fact that he's saying my wife is happy to have this. And then he would go on and talk about his hunting. And I'm not completely against hunting. I'm not anti-gun. My husband's a first responder. He has a gun every day on him. I'm not those things. I do understand there's an ethical way of hunting, and I have friends that hunt. I don't want to talk about it with them because it's not me. But he also even admitted the last time that I heard him preaching that he had trapped. Well, I used to trap animals. And to me, like, how can you speak love and yet not understand your decisions are based in something else completely? Not only decisions, but decisions that you are putting forth as if they are wonderful and glamorous and people are going to follow you. You know what I mean? When I started to see that disconnect that people were demonstrating in the way they treated animals, I realized we're in trouble. As a species, we're in trouble. So it's pretty deep-rooted for me.
It's interesting because as I hear, you share that story, the one thing that comes to mind is that values. We don't necessarily understand our own values to then actually have that play out in every aspect of our lives, or right? But if
every aspect,
and we can justify it somehow. We can segregate it and say, oh, in this situation, it's this and this is my value. No, you see, if it's your value, you live it. In
every aspect.
Every aspect, yes.
Yes.
But again, we don't actually slow down.
So if you say, my value is kindness, then it's kindness. Well, except when it comes to the flies, or except when it comes to, granted, I have horses. I've had to kill flies. I'm not going to say that I don't. But if I have one bugger that's inside a window and he's doing the best to get out, I'll open the window.
Yes.
I will. I'm like, you know what? You're trying so hard. Let me just show you. Because I always think of how many people do the same thing. Work hard, work hard, work hard. That was me at one point. Work hard, work hard, work hard, and not see that there's a door opening for you over here. So I do open up the doors even for the flies.
Beautiful.
Kindness is every aspect of your life.
Yeah. And that actually almost brings me back to, if I was to actually then zoom it right out and say to you, how would you define consciousness? Because I don't think that we take the time to genuinely think about that. What would you say?
I have actually done some deep diving into this recently, which is so interesting. Not necessarily looking at defining consciousness, but finding myself looking at research of people that did, in fact, change the way we look at consciousness and how we are continuing to research consciousness. And one which we just lost, and I'm so upset that I didn't get to meet her in this life, but Jane Goodall. She completely, she made, remember I said disruptive, right? We can be disruptive even if we're doing the thing that we're designed to do.
Yeah.
She was very disruptive. When she went down and started working with chimpanzees and holy hell, she named them. They weren't numbers. They were names. She gave them personalities. She didn't give them, she broadcast that they had personalities and that they had consciousness and that they had thoughts and they had emotions. And this sent people into a complete upheaval. The scientific world poo-pooed her. They talked down to her. They humiliated her. They did everything they could to have her shut up and continue doing the things the way they were doing things. And now we are even discovering the consciousness in bees.
Yes.
In bees, personalities in individual bees and intelligence and forethought. And I have sat there, and it was probably 12 years ago. I watched a crow. I was riding my horse down a bridle path, and I watched a crow fly up. It's a country road, not a lot of cars, but I saw this crow fly up and wait on a wire with a big acorn in his mouth. And he sat there and he timed it just right so that when the car came underneath, he dropped the acorn, the car ran over it and busted the acorn. Don't tell me that they can't figure things out, that they can't. That's forward thinking. That's future thought. That's what's going to happen in a minute, right? And he was so good at it. I sat there on my horse and I watched him do it 3 times.
Oh, wow.
It was amazing. Yeah. That was his mission for the afternoon, is he was going to get enough of these acorns. And when you are around even your own dogs and your own creatures that you live with, if you have pets, there's no way that you can argue that they don't have consciousness, they don't have emotions. But when you look in the wild, which is where the research is going now, and you see the mourning rituals, that when an elephant dies, how that family comes around. And when you see them not having seen each other, elephant that haven't seen each other in 10 years, will suddenly walk over and lock their trunks in a hug. What would be a hug to us? Because that's what that is to them. And it's a recognition, it's an honoring of that family from the other family.
Yeah.
It's interesting we're talking about the ends and the dogs are barking.
Yes. Oh, my goodness. It's like, Hugo.
It's perfect.
Yes, he's jumped into listen to you because you're talking about elephants and, them coming together.
But that is where the definition of consciousness is still being unraveled. My brother, years ago, said he looked at a tree. My brother's a wildlife biologist, and we're driving in the car, and he looked at the tree. He says, "How do you know that doesn't feel?" And now we're finding out, it might.
It does. Yeah.
It communicates, it talks, through the fungal network. That is the biggest communication device here on the planet, and that's made of fungus. It's the longest living thing on the planet is a network of fungi. We are learning so much about God's design that defining consciousness in reference to a human being is like, it's such a small piece.
I think what we have, focused on, or what the system has actually guided us to actually look at, to interpret things, has always been from a data or a science base. But if we are genuinely looking at the way that I see consciousness, it actually doesn't sit within the brain. It actually sits outside the brain, and it is part of our actual inner knowing, our intuitiveness, our connectedness.
Yeah.
And so it's not about making logic. It's actually simply about being. And so, if I go back to what I shared about, how my connection with you, it was at that level. It wasn't, about who you were. I don't think that I even, quite understood who you were, from a historical point of view. When I came to actually have a discussion with you, it was simply actually about meeting you where you're at in that moment and actually feeling through you. And as strange as that may sound to people, I think that's the piece that when we can return to that, that is the human-centeredness that actually enables consciousness to actually come to light.
Yes. And our consciousness is shared with everything around us. Our essence is part of everything there. And part of the exercises that we do somatic stuff that's in the retreats as well. And some of the things are as simple as going over and putting your arms around a tree. Yes, tree hugging.
Yeah.
But just putting your hands around the tree for a few minutes and realizing that exchange is an actual physical exchange of ions and negative and positive and all of those things, which are way beyond actually what I can describe scientifically accurately. So I'm not going to.
Yeah.
But within a few minutes, there's a change. There's a change in us. I have watched people stand in an arena frustrated because the horse wouldn't take a step that they wanted it to take, and we don't use bridles or tools or anything. So it has to have that connection in order to, you have to have a connection with your partner, equine partner, in order for anything to happen. And so they get frustrated. And the entire time, the horse is completely just trying to connect, they're looking at the person's trying to get them to move away. And the animal is saying, no, God wants you to connect. And the second that human connects, there's usually tears flowing.
And you said that earlier in respect to letting go, right? When they let go of what they actually think, needs to happen and just simply connect, that is where the recognition actually is mirrored back at them.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And in that moment, as a facilitator, I just say, I'm going to give you a minute because I'm not part of that.
Yeah.
And they will say, I felt God was looking at me right through their eyes, the horse's eyes. And I say, well, probably. Yes. And they will tell me that moment had come back to them the week after when they were at a funeral, or they had something that was very emotional, or they needed to be stabilized, or something that had come up and they got triggered, and all of a sudden that would flash in their mind. That's what connectedness can do for us.
Yeah. It's
not scrolling on Facebook or Instagram. It's not taking a pill. It's not having a glass of wine. Believe me, I love my wine. but I did have to realize that there was times I was like, that was relying on that to calm myself down. And I went, no, there's a better way to do this.
Yeah.
And when we allow that quiet, as you said, that's the gift of being alive.
Silence is actually, I think, the one thing that we tend to avoid. And I know even, from a counselling perspective, holding the space just to actually sit in silence is often found as a challenge. And you would see that, in the work that you do as well.
Yes.
And yet that is probably the most profound, moment that we will ever give ourselves permission to have.
Mm-hmm. And we can feel very vulnerable in that, can't we? If we're not used to being quiet. I used to get angry.
Oh, did you?
I used to get angry. Yeah. And I've seen that with people at the retreats. They would say, I don't like sitting here quiet. I don't like that. I don't know what you're talking about, finding peace. I'm like, oh, not that it's not bad. It's not good. It's not bad. It's just something to observe. And I understand it because that was me.
Yeah.
That was me. So that peace there's so much fear that's pushing that peace away, that's the person that needs a little bit of work. But then once they release that, they have so much expression and creativity that's going to come to them. The whole brain will come on board, not just the logical part, the whole thing. And that potential that they have will be released. And I think in that cycle where it's just fear and protection and run and go, we don't allow our whole brain to actually get on board.
Something just came to mind then, and it was, being in that moment of silence, or actually even slowing down, and then thinking about what is actually the most common thing that is being experienced on a global platform at the moment, and it is, I'm going to say, burnout. Here's the thing. I think a lot of us actually think that by taking a holiday, we are slowing down. And what we're not recognizing is, no, all that we're doing is speeding up the process to do something that potentially we enjoy, but it's not slowing down. And yet we are, associating a holiday with downtime because we're not working.
Yes.
Right? So
Yeah.
in the work that you do and what you've seen, Sandra, just being able to allow people to recognize the difference in slowing down to be present with themselves, as opposed to, I need to take a holiday, the differentiation in that, what would you say to people?
Oh, gosh. There was a phrase that I have used with a few people, and not always to their face, but no matter where you go, there you are. Changing your environment, going to the beach, doesn't mean that you're going to know how to be present. It doesn't mean that you're going to feel better. Sometimes it will take 4 days before you start to go, oh, I'm starting to feel like myself. And then you get back on the plane and you go home because it was only a week-long trip. And then you're right back into all the stuff that you were doing before, the exact same habit.
Yeah.
The 100,000 thoughts that we have, or whatever it is, 85,000 of them are the same ones we had from the day before.
Yep.
We are such creatures of habit that unless we make an intentional decision, that's pretty severe,
Yep.
right? It's not gray. You make a decision to commit to being present. And even I had to make a decision to give myself grace because I was punishing myself. Now, this just happened. This was just, I mean, we can sit here and say, oh, we've done all this work, but I still found this in October. I had to close down a big portion of my business and it felt great. I got that, I called it the peace of the Holy Spirit, right? I went, okay, that's what I was supposed to do. Because in that aspect of my work, I was pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and not even breathing. And I was keeping myself from spending time with my horses and keeping myself from doing my workouts because I thought those are rewards. I haven't done enough marketing. I haven't done enough phone calls. I haven't brought in enough revenue this month. I can't do those things. And then I stopped. I thought, would I treat an employee like that? Would I treat another human being or even an animal like that? Would I say, you haven't been good enough, so you can't enjoy 10 minutes with your horse. You can't enjoy. I mean, that's just crazy.
Yeah.
I wasn't training my dogs. I wasn't spending time outside. I was just getting myself. That's a prescription for depression for me.
Yeah, and we don't actually recognize it because we're so busy chasing what we thought that we needed to do. I think I actually related that to a situation where I say, I understand you're climbing the ladder, but when have you actually paused to say, is this the right ladder?
Yes. I mean, we can all probably identify with that. I had a friend early on that got that she fought and worked. I mean, she moved to California the same time that I did. I actually got her apartment in my complex, and there we were working in the industry, and she was working so hard and applying everything that she could, and she got what she thought was her dream job. And it was exactly that. She had climbed a ladder and got there and went, oh, this is the wrong ladder. This isn't really what I want to do.
Yep.
Yeah. And I've been very cautious of that, or so I think I am. But there are definitely times that I've spent some time climbing some ladders and spending time in environments that I had to finally go, oh, this isn't where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
And the important thing is that if that's happening to somebody that's listening, make that choice, that decision to go,
Yeah.
I'm going to step away from this. And when you step away from it, if you have a sense of peace, then the stepping away is exactly what you need to do.
It's interesting that until we actually make that intentional decision, and I talk about that a lot, so I'm glad that you actually raised that, the intention and actually then following through really actually gives you peace. And until you actually do it, you don't realize how much you've actually been carrying.
Yes. And I hope that this isn't, a lot of times God will have to make me literally lay down. He will make me sick. I very rarely get sick. But if I am doing that, if I'm going, I'm not paying attention, and the signals are coming that it's time to change paths, get on a different track, close that door, go to the other open door, and I'm not listening, I will end up something like getting sick. And that's exactly what happened. My husband went on a business trip. He came back and he had, I teased him. I went to pick him up at the airport. I looked at his face like, you're sick. I was like, stay over there, stay with me, don't breathe on me. And he, inevitably, I'm in the same house as him. So, of course, I get the same thing. But I had a symptom that he didn't have. I couldn't open up my eyes. They burned so badly.
Wow.
It was basically a serious cold with some coughing and some nasal stuff, but my eyes burned. And so I couldn't I thought I'm going to work through this sickness. I brought my book and then I got my marketing plan and I got my computer and you're laughing from an identification, I think. But that laugh.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Been there, done that.
And yeah. And I think Oprah Winfrey even said, she goes, yeah, this is what I try to do. And I'm like, me too. Like, I don't sit there and just take a nap or watch Hallmark movies. Like, I think I'm going to work through being sick. And he said, oh, no, you don't. No, you don't. I couldn't open my eyes. So I had to just sit and I listened to podcasts. I slept. I listened to music. And it was really interesting. Sometimes I couldn't even see what I was clicking when I was hitting my phone to go to the next podcast. But I had multiple messages that said, what if you were to just stop?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I finally listened.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
interesting. So I did laugh because, I used to have this motto, until you're dead, you don't stop. Right? I did say used to, right?
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, in the last, I'm going to say 5-6 years, and if I go back to understand what's different, I have not been sick. And I mean, I have not been sick. But as you were saying this, it all just flashed back at me, and it was understanding why. What's the difference? And genuinely, Sandra, I think I've become so conscious and so intentional about staying on path and understanding the bigger picture and not getting caught up in the noise, and maybe actually giving myself permission to be me, not actually the expectation of anybody else, and knowing why. Why is it that this is so important? That I now only do what I'm here to do. I don't buy into, all the other things. And I'm really good at saying no. I've turned down so many opportunities, and I'm talking about 10 figures, massive projects, because I didn't align. And I'm okay with that, so I'm no longer driven by societal norms and expectations and the perception of what success is. And that just landed for me. So thank you.
I'm so glad. Yes.
Interesting.
That's so interesting. Yeah. And you travel. It's not like you just sit in a bubble. I mean, you travel, you're on planes, you're exposed to all of the bugs that are out there. And so, yeah, that's really, really interesting. And that question of, does it align with where I want to go? And sometimes it is hard to make that decision because there's a big shiny thing. And especially if somebody is in a position where a financial reset, or they're looking, oh gosh, I got this debt, I got to pay this thing off. And there's something that's bright and shiny in front of them, or maybe somebody that they know has done something with this project, and you have to get involved. It's enticing. But I think it's also sometimes, if we talk about the light and the darkness, I think it's the darkness going, oh yeah, go do that. Because that'll keep you away from what you're actually here to do, what your purpose is. And those distractions, I think, cost me a lot of time. And I look back in the couple of years prior to today, I had some partnerships that were, what did I call them? Great learning experiences.
Yep.
I built my discernment a little bit better. And being trusting is wonderful, but I think discernment actually does have a position. And when things don't feel right, sometimes even though it's spoken that it is in alignment with what you're doing, if it doesn't feel right, that's where the intuition that you talk about comes in.
Yeah.
If it's in your gut and it's going, hey, something's not right, you know that there's a misalignment. And that's the time for sure to get quiet and sit and feel everything about that.
Yeah. And, it works in the same way in knowing that if something doesn't feel right, and if you actually voice that, potentially you might lose that contract, or you might not actually win the tender.
Yeah.
I no longer stay silent, because I think my staying silent actually is then the enabler.
Yes. And it cost me. It cost me.
Yeah.
Those I gave, it was probably, I was looking at probably $100,000 loss by keeping silent. I gave my power away to silence instead of speaking up. And I look back and went, wow, that was painful, but I'm grateful. I'm grateful for it. And cut to just recently working on a collaborative effort, kind of a leadership academy, and very experiential. It's a very exciting thing that we're doing, launching this year in early 2026. And we originally had somebody that was involved, and I saw, my gut went, eh, and then I actually started really listening, not just to the words. That was enough that I could come and say, these are the words that were spoken, but actually listening to the way I felt and watching how other people felt in the room when this individual came. Seeing the actual little nuances of the heads that dropped and the shoulders that tightened.
Wow.
And I went, no. And I finally said, with no hesitation whatsoever, I said, look, you guys, with love, I see what you're doing here, and I'm going to back out. What do you mean?
Yeah.
And I said, well, I this is what I've seen this individual say, do. And I said, I'm not defaming him. You were in the same room. You heard the same words. You saw the same behavior. And I am not okay with this, because this doesn't reflect my values that I want to align with. And you could have, it was like that tire screech special effect. I was like,
Yeah.
and they actually had a meeting, and they said, you know what, you're right. I'm like, oh, okay. And we restructured, and that individual was asked to leave. And now we're building something that's really amazing. But I had to, in that moment, be really clear with love.
Yeah.
I wish you guys build this out and everything that we're talking about, but I am not aligned with an individual that's here, and I am going to back away. I didn't say, you need to get rid of that person.
Yeah.
I said, this isn't aligning with me. And it caused them to stop and take a look. And I had the same thing happen with, believe it or not, a friend of ours who is very, very recognized in sci-fi movies. He's a huge star in sci-fi. And he had been waiting to work with an individual producer director for so long. And the gentleman finally said, we have a script for you. And he was super excited, because I finally get to work with, Del Toro or whatever. And they sent the script, and the end of the script was completely against his values. And he wrote back and he said, I thank you so much. I cannot do this. And he said, why? And he, with love, backed out, and they rewrote the script.
Oh, great.
So that was one of my first times that I saw somebody actually speak up. And in that environment, fitting in is how you survive. At least that's what I used to think, right?
Yeah.
In that Hollywood world. And so for him to stand up for himself and say, I'm sorry, no, and have the script actually changed. They actually rewrote the ending. So you'd be surprised at what can happen. I mean, I'm not surprised anymore, because I believe what I believe. I have faith that if we're supposed to be somewhere, it's going to work out.
Yeah.
So.
You said something that was so powerful, and something that I actually, I guess share myself. And that is, if you have the courage to actually share something, and in your case, you identified, something that you recognize, but more importantly, that you felt, but you delivered the message with love.
Yes.
And that is such an important piece, that when you say something that is, I'm going to use your words, disruptive, or the opposite of what's actually presented, but you deliver it with love, then my belief is that people can hear it.
Yes.
Right. And
yes.
You have actually shown that in both of the examples that you just shared.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, if love is a value, which it is one of mine, what did you say earlier? In every aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Sandra, you and I can actually talk forever, but we do need to wrap this up. And, there are so many, I'm going to say, golden nuggets that you actually shared. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your presence, and thank you for just being who you are. You're just such a beautiful soul. Like, honestly, you really are.
Well, right back at you. That's exactly how I feel about you.
Oh, thank you. But if I was to actually ask you to think about what's one thing that you would like, the listeners to this particular podcast to take away, what would that be?
Oh, there's so many things. I felt like I had an answer for you, and then 1,000 other things popped into my head. No, the one thing that I think is so important, and I've said this multiple times, even at various times of my own journey, don't believe what other people say about your value.
Mm.
And I have had people that felt lost, like they weren't seen, and they were A-list celebrities. They were famous athletes. And when I'd sit with them, I would ask them an unexpected, but with love, a very personal question, because I was actually legitimately curious, because I wanted to know what makes them up, what makes them happy, what do they want to, people, what do they do for fun? Or I would ask something like that, and all of a sudden they would feel seen. With the person that's on the street that people walk by, or the girl at the checkout stand that people don't make eye contact with. Making eye contact and actually waiting for the answer to how are you? That's helping that person be seen.
Yeah.
So when somebody would tell these celebrities that they are everything and all that, and they still don't feel like they're seen, somebody tells the person on the street, don't even look at me, you beggar, or whatever, and they feel like they're not seen. They're not a beggar. A celebrity is just a human with a very public job. But when you see the people for who they really are, you realize labels and boxes don't belong in our connections with people.
Yeah,
I never ask somebody, what do you do?
No.
That will never, ever come out of my mouth. Never. What do you do? No. If I really want to find out what they do for a living or what they're at the networking event for, I will say, what are you passionate about? And maybe that'll give me the answer. But I never ask, what do you do? Yeah.
I love that. It's something that I don't do either, because it's not who they are. But, you shared something that I think is so important for people to just actually take stock of for themselves, and that is, don't allow other people to actually give you an indication of what your values are, but more importantly, who you are. It is so valuable, and I love that, Sandra. Love it.
And sometimes it's hard, though. Sometimes it's our people in our immediate family telling us who we are. And so that simple note to don't let other people tell you your worth has to be run through a lot of filters to really be applied. It's simple, but simple can be deep. And that's something that may take some work. I'm still working on it, I think.
Sandra, I always say I'm practicing living life. So I'm there with you. All right. So I'm going to wrap up there. But, if you're taking anything away from this podcast, the one golden nugget that Sandra is actually sharing with you is understand whose story you're actually living. And I've put that in my own words, but there are so many golden nuggets. And if you go back through this, you're actually going to see that she has opened up her heart and not just a story. So thank you, Sandra.
Thank you for having me.
This was Let's Pay Attention, Hacking Consciousness. Stay awake, lead with heart, be bold enough to listen deeply. I'm Cathy Dimarchos. Until next time, be the impact.